Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Good Shabbos and welcome. Some of you are probably surprised to see me on your screen. I am clearly not either of the rabbis Zober. I am instead Rabbi Myra Soifer, pronouns she, her, and hers. I have the privilege of being the Rabbi Emerita of Temple Sinai here in Reno, Nevada. I am a last-minute stand-in tonight for Rabbi Sarah Zober, who would have been leading services, but don't panic, everything is fine, and not to worry. Some of you are well aware, however, that Rabbi Benjamin Zober was in a bicycle accident a couple weeks ago, and he is being closely monitored, especially because he hit his head, and so there's always concussion issues. Last night and this morning, he had some pain near his eye, and the doctors were concerned enough, out of excess of caution, to have Rabbi Sarah bring him into the emergency room. He is fine. They did a CT scan and everything is perfectly wonderful. But again, out of an excess of caution, they ended the day with a consult at the Sports Medicine Center at UNR, where they deal with concussions and the aftermath all the time. They too said he's fine, except he needs to get more rest. He needs to rest and rest and rest and rest some more. So he is doing that, and as you can imagine, it was a long and anxious day for Rabbi Sarah as well. So she is getting rest, and I am happy to have stepped in. But again, I did so rather very shortly ago, so I will ask your forbearance and understanding as we worship tonight. I did not have time to prepare a lengthy sermon, which I'm sure will break everyone's heart, right? Everybody loves a lengthy sermon. So again, I ask your understanding. I know I will have it. We worship at Temple Sinai out of the prayer book Mishkan Tefillah. I will give you the page numbers for that. There is a virtual Siddur that you can see across the banner, how you can download that from sinaireno.org. And let me say, before I forget, I would be terribly amiss not to give much thanks to Naomi Eiser, who is running the tech. She is doing all the tech stuff at the Zober house, and I am sitting in my condominium. I don't understand how all that works, but fortunately Naomi does, and she's making it all work. So thank you very much. So again, we will be worshiping from Mishkan Tefillah, or you can follow along in the virtual Siddur. And just a bit of a heads up, this was the service that Rabbi Sarah planned to lead, and as you all know, Rabbi Sarah has a professionally trained, beautiful voice, and plays guitar exquisitely as well. I do neither of those things. So there may be some places in tonight's service where I make some changes in what you see in the virtual Siddur. Again, please forbear with me. I will be doing a different Torah reading, but we can talk about all that. I will talk about all that when we get there. Again, I appreciate your patience with us tonight, and we will worship. So clearly, it's time to get rid of some of the week's clutter and some of the anxiety and some of the stress and enter into Shabbat. And we can do that with a nigun, a wordless melody. When the words get out of the way, sometimes we can find our way easier to the sacred. So join me as we center for Shabbat. We turn to the reading at the top of page 6, and I thought as I looked at this reading, it's titled, "We Enter This Sanctuary," and you will see lines, that line at the beginning and other similar lines as we read together. And clearly we are not yet back literally in our sanctuary together. We will be soon, which will be wonderful. But it struck me that of necessity during these past 2 years, year and a half of COVID, we have all, again, of necessity, turned portions of our home at least for an hour each week very intentionally into a sanctuary. Perhaps we can carry that with us when we are back together in the Temple Sinai Sanctuary, and know that we can make our domestic spaces, whether it's our couch or our living room or whatever room. I'm in a little office right now. We can intentionally make those spaces sacred, and we can make holy space in what we might have thought were some of the most unlikely places. So if you will join me in this reading. We enter this sanctuary to welcome Shabbat. Within these walls, we sit surrounded by numberless generations. Our ancestors built the synagogue as a visible sign of God's presence in their midst. Throughout our long history and our endless wanderings, it has endured, a beacon of truth, love, and justice for all humanity. Its presence guided our ancestors to lives of righteousness, holding up to them a vision of their truest selves. Now we, in our turn, come into this sanctuary to affirm the sacredness of our lives. May we enter this place in peace. May holiness wrap around us as we cross its threshold. Wariness, doubt, the flaws within our human hearts, the harshness of the weak, let these drop away at the door. In the brightness of Shabbat, let peace settle upon us as we lift our hearts in prayer. And of course, our first prayer will be to bring light into our Sabbath spaces as well. And so I have my Shabbat candles here. If you have yours as well, join me in lighting them. Right, as always, the matches don't want to light. And we will light them. Come on. There we go. And we'll join in the Shabbat blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu להדליק נר של שבת. If you'll give me a minute, I'm going to put these aside. I'm at a very small desk. I don't want to set myself on fire. As we brought in Shabbat with light, let's bring in Shabbat with song. Yedid Nefesh is in front of you. I'm sorry, it might not be. It's on page 10, if you have the prayer book. Yedid nefesh av harachaman, Yedid nefesh av harachaman, mishochav-decha, eretz zonecha, mishochav-decha, yada eretz zonecha, yarutz avdecha kemoyah, yishtachave yada And if you keep going in your virtual Siddur or in the middle of page 11, the next page in your Mishkan Tefillah, Ki Eshmera Shabbat, when I keep Shabbat, God watches over me. It is a sign forever between God and me. Again, join me. Ki Eshmera Shabbat, El Yishmareni, Ki Eshmera Shabbat, El Yishmareni, Oti le'olamei ad beino uveni, Oti le'olamei ad beino uveni. And on page 20, L'chadodi, as we welcome the Sabbath with this song, as we always do each week. We do verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. Verse 9, of course, is where we literally invite the Sabbath Queen to join us. And I remind you, as I said last week, there are times in our service where you may hear please rise, or you may read it in the prayer book. There are many ways to rise. You can rise in body, you can rise in spirit, however you are comfortable and whatever feels appropriate for you. And we do that on the last verse as we turn as well, wherever you are, to the door where a bride, a visitor as cherished as the Shabbos bride would enter. So, לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. 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 שחמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מהראש מקדם ניסוחה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורק ומאורי, אורי, אורי, שדברי, כבוד אדוני אלייך נגלה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. And this is the verse where we turn and welcome the Sabbath Queen. בואי ושלום אהתת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוכם מונה עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לחדודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. And at the top of page 26, we continue with the Chetzi Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, בעלמא דברך רותה וימליך מלכותה, בחייכם וביומכם ובחיי כל בית ישראל. בעגלה, בעגלה, ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי בקודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תאמירן בעלמא, ואמרו amen. And at the top of page 28, Again, whether in body or in spirit, we rise for the Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamivorach Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Hamivorach Le'olam Vaed Hamivorach Hamivorach Le'olam Vaed. Page 113 in Mishkan Tefillah, and I'm skipping a page in the virtual Siddur to the reading once or twice. Please join me. Once or twice in a lifetime, a man or woman may choose a radical leaving, having heard, Lech Lecha, go forth. God disturbs us toward our destiny by hard events and by freedom's now urgent voice, which explode and confirm who we are. We don't like leaving, but God loves becoming. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. We turn to the Shema on pages 34 and 35. It may be your custom to rise. If it is, and you choose to do so, please. And if not, follow whatever your custom is as we join in the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. And at the top of page 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alev alefbecha v'shinatam levanecha v'divartam B'shivtecha b'beitecha u'b'lechtecha b'derech u'b'shochbecha u'b'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha u'b'hisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem Emet. In the middle of page 39, this reading is set up responsively, so if you would read it that way, or read it with me, however suits you. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May the earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, Time and again, we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in the dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. And again, we are now on page 40, and we join in the Mi Chamocha. Mi Chamocha ba'im Adonai, Mi Chamocha nehda b'kodesh, Norah tehilot osef peleh. Norah tehilot osef peleh, Malechutecha ra'u banecha, Bokei ayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Ze'eli anu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. We turn to the reading, Let There Be Love. That's on page 43 in Mishkan Tefillah. And again, join me. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up, waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, Haporei Sukkot Shalom Aleinu va'al kol amo Yisrael va'al Yerushalayim. And in the middle of page 44, the Yism'Zoom, those who keep Shabbat by calling it a delight will rejoice in your realm. The people that hallow Shabbat will delight in your goodness. For being pleased with the seventh day, you hallowed it as the most precious of days, drawing our attention to the work of creation, all of which we sing. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'koreh oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'koreh oneg Shabbat. Mekadesheh, Mekadesheh Shvi Shabbat, Kulam Yisbeu, V'yit'angu mitu Becha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'koreh oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat v'koreh oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi'i ratzita bo, Ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat, Chemdat yamim oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat, v'koreh oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat, v'koreh oneg Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh v'reshit Shabbat. Zecher lema'aseh v'reshit Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat, v'koreh oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malachutecha, shomere, 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 Shabbat, v'koreh oneg Shabbat. turn in the prayer books to page 46, where we begin our tefillah, our amidah. Again, if whether in body or in spirit, this is a prayer at which, if you choose, you may stand. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Page 48. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. On page 50. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברחמים רבים, סוחמך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני And on page 52, if you would read with me, Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kdoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah. Baruch ata Adonai ha'el hakadosh. You are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. And we take some moments now for silent prayer. If you'd like to, there are prayers readings in the prayer book all the way to page 62, where the silent prayer, where we'll pick up again, or simply the prayers of your own heart, your mind, your thoughts. We pause. Page 62. יהיו רצון עם רפי, והגיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני צורי, Adonai Tzuri V'Goali V'Goali. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, Adonai, our rock and our Redeemer. We turn now to our Torah service for tonight, or our Torah reading for tonight. In our prayer books, we are on at the bottom of page 245. If you would join me in reading there. Happy is the one who finds wisdom, the one who gains understanding. For its value is greater than silver, its yield than fine gold. It is more precious than rubies. No treasure can match it. We turn to our blessing for the reading of Torah. And let me just say at the outset that I'm not going to be doing the reading that you see in front of you in the prayer book, in the virtual Siddur. I will be reading from the same portion. This week it's Vayishlach. And I will be reading from Genesis chapter 32, verses 23 through 25. So a smaller portion, since I just really got it together very shortly. And I will say, I'll go back and translate it, and I'm going to talk about it a little. So don't worry that it's not what you have on the page in front of you. But on top of page 86, our blessing for the study, reading of Torah, if you would join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to engage with the words of Torah. And so let me chant for you these few verses, and I'll translate them, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Vayakum balaylahu vayikach et shtei nashav ve'et shtei shivchotav ve'et achad asachah yiladav vayavohu ma'avar yabohu. Vayikachem vaya'avirehem et hanachal vaya'aveh et ashelo vayivater Yaakov levadoho vaya'avek ishimoho ad Alohot HaShachar. All right, so here's the translation and a bit of explanation as to what is going on here. That same night, okay, so what same night? Let me explain where we are. We are in the text immediately prior, the night before. Jacob is going to meet up once again with his brother Esau. You will recall that he's not seen Esau for now just pushing on 2 decades, I think. And when he last saw Esau, it was immediately after he had deceived Esau and cheated him out of his firstborn blessing and his birthright as a firstborn as well. So he left in a hurry because Esau was, needless to say, really angry at him. And I think Jacob rightfully feared for his life, so he left. He stayed with Lavan. He worked 7 years for Rachel, 7 years for Leah. He acquired a great deal of wealth and possessions. He is now returning, and he is going to meet up with Esau the next day. He does not know how that is going to go. So that same night, Jacob got up, took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 children, and he crossed the river Yabok. After taking them across the stream, he also sent across the possessions that he owned. Now Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the rise of dawn. And I stopped there, but you will recall that this wrestling scene is where Jacob is hurt in his hip. he wrestles with somebody who seems to be a divine representative, and he gets the new name Yisrael, one who wrestles with God and with humans. But that's not what I want to deal with. I want to deal with these couple little verses that I just shared with you. And again, let me remind you what happened here. Jacob is going to meet Esau the next day. So he's taken his possessions and his great wealth, and he's kind of divided it up, and he has sent some of his possessions in several kind of small little groups with his servants ahead of him to meet Esau. Presumably this is a gift to Esau, a peace offering to Esau. It's not hard to imagine that Jacob also wants to impress Esau, that he's now a wealthy man, and maybe, that'll make their reunion go more smoothly. Again, Jacob doesn't know how this is going to go when he meets up with Esau again. But he still has at least half of his possessions. He kept a great deal of his possessions. And he's concerned that if it doesn't go well with Esau, he wants particularly his wives and his children, let alone his wealth, to be safe. So he sends his two wives, his two concubines, his second wives, their maidservants, and the 11 children that he now has by this collection of 4 women. He sends them across. He's on the near side of the river Jabbok, and he sends them across that river. So presumably they'll be safer across the river on the other side. He also he takes them across the river. It's not completely clear in the text. He also either sends over or takes over the rest of his possessions. So they too will be protected on the other side of the river Jabbok. And then, this is the piece that's a little bit strange. We find ourselves at the end when he's going to have the wrestling match, that he's back on the near side of the river. So he didn't stay there with his wives and children and possessions. For some reason, he's back on the near side of the river. The rabbis noticed that, and in the Talmud, they ask, how come? Why didn't he stay on the far side of the river as well? He could have come back in the morning, but he didn't. And since he came back, when he did come back, he now has to stay there because night has fallen and it wouldn't be safe for him to cross the river. So they ask, why did he return to the original spot? And the answer that they give is that he had forgotten what they call some pachim kitanim. This is in the Talmud tractate Chulin. He had forgotten some pachim kitanim, which are small jars, some little things that he had left behind, and that's why he went back, and now he finds himself alone. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because why would he go back for little stuff when he's a rich man, and all his wealth and possessions are on the other side. So what is it he's going back for? What kind of little stuff did he go back for? Insignificant things. And what the rabbis go on to conclude is that what might have seemed like insignificant items, who knows? Maybe it was one of his kids' stuffed teddy bears or something, a favorite something of one of his wives. That those things might have seemed like they were small things. They might have seemed like they were insignificant things. But apparently, small or not, they were not insignificant to Jacob. They were whatever. They had enough value that he went back and got them. Or went back to get them, and therefore is on the other side, the near side of the Jabbok River. Now, I thought of this, and I don't know if Laura Ashkin and Chris Stanton are on the other side of the screen tonight. I do know they have company. Their daughter has come into town, so they may or may not be. But I thought of them when I read this, because I thought of them, and there may be others at this worship service tonight. The Ashkin Stantons had to flee their house when the Dixie Fire appeared to be coming near. It didn't come to their house, and everything was safe and sound in the end. But there was a moment when they had to pack up their 2 cars and come into Reno and stayed with Laura's mom, where they knew they would be safe. And I thought about at that point whether they or were we in any such situation, might do what the rabbis imagine Jacob did tonight. That is, we would pack up the obvious big things, the important documents, and we'd make sure we had the kids and the pets. But what would be the smaller things, the things that other people might judge to be insignificant, that we would also treasure enough that we would make sure that they were with us if we had to leave? I wonder then, Of course, this is just rabbinic imagining about Jacob, the things that he went back for. But what I would love to know what those, if it happened, which of course it's imagining, but I would love to know what those things were, because God willing, none of us will ever have to flee. We won't be meeting up with someone who we are fearful of meeting up. We won't have fire. We won't have flood. We won't have to run and figure out what possessions to take. But if we did, I'm sure those, particularly those things that might appear to be small, the little things, would tell more about who we are than the big things. What we valued, what we value, what we hold most dear. That I think would give us the most insight, which is why I wish I knew what those little things were for Jacob. We'd know more about him. But the things that matter to us, that might seem insignificant to others, those things that we hold most precious, they speak to who we are, to what our deepest values are, and presumably to how we behave in the world. So I guess I would suggest tonight that maybe you look around and think about what those things that somebody might view as small, but are most important to you, and most you treasure the most. Think for a moment the values that they represent and who you are, and then may it guide you on this Shabbat to live those values represented in the little things that we treasure the most. Shabbat Shalom. All right, we turn back in our virtual prayer books, and give me a minute. I have to pull it up on my phone. Okay. After the portion that I did not read, we turn in our prayer books now to the middle of page 253 for our Mishbeirach prayer for healing. I should say here that you all know this, but our administrative assistant, Mike Stombaugh, is amazing. With very short order, I did not imagine that I would have the names tonight on our healing list. I do, because Mike made sure he got them to me. So on our Mishbeirach list, and again, before I read these names, I would urge you, if there are names that you would like to lift up for healing on this Shabbat, you can put them, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, put them in the comments in the chats. We lift up on our list tonight those whom we hold in our hearts and our prayers for healing. Wendy Alderman, Harav Binyamin ben Yaakov Bracha, which is Rabbi Benjamin Zober, Joan Brickman, Neil Calder, Laura Cohen, Tali Engel, Stephen Gould, Al Grossman, Marlene Harris, Ken Hecht, Harvey Higdon, Laura Jawad, Roger Kleinman, Richard Lopez, Harav Miriam Bat Shifra Pinchas, which is me, Harav Miriam Yael Chaya Bat Sarah, Jackson McKenna Morgan Ramirez, Lori Pattison, Judy Ramos, Shirley Rutkovitz, Sarah Bat Chava, Marianne Schenker, Jessica Waditz, Jen Wolf, Paula Wolf, Usher Zalik, Tim Ober, of course, everyone affected by the coronavirus, all the names that you have placed within the chat, other names perhaps that you are holding quietly in your hearts and in your minds. And this is a prayer for healing, so I dare say there are lots of people in the world whose names we don't know to lift up, but we pray for them. And in fact, if we're talking about healing as wholeness, I dare say this prayer might be for every one of us. So please join me. Mishbeirach avotenu mikor habracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishbeirach imotenu mikor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. We turn to page 257. Let's read together. God's Torah is perfect, reviving the soul. God's teaching is sure, making wise the simple. God's precepts are right, delighting the mind. God's mitzvot are clear, giving light to the eyes. God's word is pure, enduring forever. God's judgments are true and altogether just. We turn now to the Aleinu, which is on the bottom of page 282. Again, this is a prayer traditionally where we rise. That is, of course, you can rise in body or in spirit, or whatever is comfortable for you. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula etzer bereshit, shelo asanu kagoyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on page 284, Shehu notei shamayim v'yosed haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim mima'al u'shchinatu zo b'govei mehromim hu Eloheinu ein od emet malkeinu efes ulato kakahatu b'torato v'yadata hayom b'hashevoto elevahavecha ki Adonai hu ha'Elohim b'shamayim mima'al ve'al ha'aretz mitachat NO. And join me in the English. In truth, you are our sovereign without compare, as it is written in your Torah. Know then this day and take it to heart that Adonai is surely God in the heavens above and on the earth below. There is none else. And on page 287, V'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Thus it has been said, Adonai will be sovereign over all the earth. On that day, Adonai will be one, and God's name will be one. We turn now to the Kaddish, and we begin with a reading at the bottom of page 289 as we prepare to remember departed loved ones. Join me if you would. The light of life is a finite flame. Like the Shabbat candles, life is kindled. It burns, it glows. It is radiant with warmth and beauty, but it soon fades. Its substance is consumed, and it is no more. In light we see, in light we are seen. The flames dance, and our life burns down and gutters. There is an end to the flames. We see no more and are no more seen. Yet we do not despair, for we are more than a memory slowly fading into the darkness. With our lives, we give life. Something of us can never die. We move in the eternal circle of darkness and death, of light and life. Zichronam livracha. We remember these departed loved ones of our Temple Sinai family. And again, if there are names that you would lift up for Kaddish, please put them in the chat or in the comments. We remember the recent death in the past on Shiva of Stanley Browdy, brother of Annette Friedlander. We mark Shloshim deaths in the past 30 days of Lucille Alexander, mother of Ann Smith and mother of grandmother and great-grandmother to so many more. Gerald Kaufman, dear friend of Jill Flansreich, and Rabbi Earl A. Grolman. And we remember these who have died in this year past: Betty Williams, Pamela Walker, Barb McBrady, Mary Jane Ledwick, Inga Kaplan, Elizabeth Ruth Rassler, James Cross, Peter Alsberg, Eileen Jenkins, Nee Rosenthal, Selma Four, Steve Strauss, Andrew Varadi, Donna Matlis, Charlie Perlman, Rabbi Michael Cook, Sharon Perlman, Mildred Millie Small, Alan Dabrow, William Lebovic, Jim Ballantyne, Eli Kane, David Stucker, Terry Gregory, Grayson Corbett, Joan F. Nutkin, and Andrew Venuti. And we mark the yard sites this Shabbat of Diane Goodman, Adeline Rubin, Alan Blum, Tammy Needswecki, Amy Garfinkel, Herman Klump, Nancy Livingston, Miriam Cooper Reed, Ralph Wolfstein, Leona E. Green, Reuben Cladney, Frida Alderman, Betty Williams, and Shirley Zober. Their memories and the memories of all those you have lifted up, Zichronam livracha, may their memories be a blessing, and may we be the best of our memorial living lives that give honor to all that was good and enduring in their lives. We turn now to page 294 and join in the Kaddish. And again, if it is your custom to rise, please do so. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divarach chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayei chon v'yomei chon u'v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'adala u'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'al v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitada v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha berichu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'alma v'imeru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imeru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imaru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn, and may there be comfort for all the bereaved among us. Together we say, Amen. And if you are standing, please be seated. Okay, there are a whole lot of announcements tonight. Let me do just a few of them. Again, thank you, Naomi, for running the live stream tech. There will be no Yism'Zoom virtual online oneg this week or next week. We'll return to normal Yism'Zoom sessions after services on Friday, December 3rd. Tomorrow, Saturday, there is our usual 10 o'clock a.m. Torah study via Zoom. Deborah Ottenberg can give you the Zoom connection if you need it, or you can find it. I think it's SinaiReno.org, SinaiReno.org/Torah study for the Zoom meeting ID and info. And again, you don't have to know Hebrew. Some do, some don't. You don't have to ever have done Torah study before. Just come. It's fun and it's intellectually stimulating and it's a good deal. So tomorrow, 10 o'clock, Torah study. There's a lot of events coming up in the next 2 weeks. I don't want to go through them all. You can look at the Sinai website and find them all. This Sunday, though, I would remind you there is Sinai School at 9:30 a.m. And this Sunday as well at 7:00 p.m., our annual Community Interfaith Thanksgiving service will take place at Immaculate Conception Catholic Church. That's at 2900 North McCarran Boulevard. Masks are required, and I do hope you will turn out and join with the community. On the Thursday and Friday of Thanksgiving week, which is next week, the temple office will be closed. But that Friday, we are returning to in-person Kabbalat Shabbat services. So there will also be live stream. So you can either come on in person or in line. Hanukkah starts Sunday night, November 28th. It's an early year for Hanukkah this year. And so there's all kinds of Hanukkah announcements, which again, you can check on the Sinai website, or you will hear next Friday night. So I won't go through them all, but there's a lot of Hanukkah parties happening in this town, so be sure to check that out. So I think those are our announcements for tonight, at least the ones I want to go through. There's lots more on the virtual Siddur and again on the website. So we're going to turn to our closing song, Shalom Aleichem, which you can find at the top of page 323. We will do Kiddush after the closing song, and then I will send you on your way, hopefully for a Sabbath of rest. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaSharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malachei HaMlachim, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech, malachei hamlachim, kadosh baruch hu. Barchuni l'shalom, malachei hashalom, malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Tzeitchem l'shalom malachei hashalom malachei elyon. Mi melech malachei hamlachim hakadosh Baruch Hu. And if you'll turn to page 5, if you have something with the fruit of the vine in it, I do. You can vicariously use mine or pick up your own. We join in Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Bare puri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu b'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uv'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reshit. Ki hu yom techila lemikra kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim. Ki banu b'chata ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim b'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava uv'ratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim. Blessings to Rabbis Sarah and Rabbi Benjamin especially, and to you all. And Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thanks for being here. Good Shabbos.